our boy Tim Pool, and I first saw this covered by Brian Brown, has really gotten offended because in Chicago, the new mayor is looking at public grocery stores. And well, let's let Tim, do this news story. He's a newsman. He's spoken at places like New York University and such.
The communist shift in Chicago is beginning. And don't be surprised if you start to see it pop up all over the place. This tactic, implemented in Chicago. Chicago considers creation of government-operated grocery store. The promotion of food equity was an expressed goal in the mayor's press release. Why am I saying food communism or communist policies? Crime runs rampant. People struggle to survive. Walgreens closes. The mall closes.
Now, I just want to pause here. And I just want to say, Tim Pool, for anybody just not hip to this, Tim Pool is exactly the thing he rails against. The sort of like out of touch elite that doesn't really want to address the real problems. And instead, he's actually obscuring the real issues. These grocery stores are not closing down because of crime. They're closing down because of capitalism, a different C word. And Tim Pool exists. And the reason he gets like Republicans on his program and the different types of like thinkers about the market and libertarianism is because he exists as a defender of capitalism that supposedly doesn't play either side. So like this idea that this is crime, which by the way, like these places like Target that are closing down and saying it's a crime, they're saying that because actually their business model's fucked and they're losing it because to online dealers and stuff like that, and they don't want to share stock or scare their shareholders. Mm-hmm. And maybe we could just take everything cops say about when it's time to ask for more budgets at face value, like Tim wants to.
San Francisco is collapsing. Well, what happens? I don't know. Problem, reaction, solution, right? Problem. Stores are closing due to high crime. Let's pause for a second and just say the crime's caused.
That's not why. It's because grocery stores is a very low margin business and it's not worth the effort for capitalists to do it.
Lax Democrat policies, but I digress. Crime runs rampant. Stores close. Here's one store. Beloved Oakland restaurant is forced to shut down with its owner blaming rampant crime.
Sorry, Matt. Like, why is he going
now let's go to Chicago.
So much on fucking San Francisco, by the way, too?
That's because he had to change the subject entirely from what's causing these food deserts.
Yeah, I know. So he has to. I'm just saying, like, let's just not let him get away with that in this, right? He's like all over the map.
Also, who knows about that case? Even like business owners talk a lot of shit.
As these narratives persist, and these stores begin to close because they can't keep up with the crime, people in these areas start to complain. In San Francisco, they shut down many Walgreens stores. The malls closed. The hotels have surrendered their property. And eventually people are going to say, what do we do? Where can I buy food anymore?
I mean, not that you want to buy foods from.
Oh my God. So this is actually like insane.
Oh yeah.
So you've watched this before. So I'm like, I'm learning as he starts to develop this argument. So I'm hoping that we're about to get into some conspiracy stuff, that the idea is that, to let the crime get really bad so that the government could come in and take all these nice companies and businesses from mom and pop.
Again, and like there's a very clear conspiracy that even like, I feel like the Walgreens, was it the CFO or someone at a shareholders meeting was like, we might have over-exaggerated the crime stuff. And you know why? You know what the real conspiracy is? You know what the government... Hey, man, here's my definition of fascism. It's when the government and corporations work together. You know how that's happening here? Is corporations are saying, hey, how about instead of us hiring security and doing that sort of stuff and like staffing our places full, how about taxpayers pay for more cops? And that's what Tim Pool is abetting here, that little bait and switch.
Then steps in. And this is what's happening in Chicago. And they say, well, ladies and gentlemen, we know that these private businesses refuse to support you, so we will. Here's the story. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson has revealed that the city will be partnering with the Economic Security Project to explore the creation of a government-owned grocery store to assist historically underserved communities. Oh, here it is. All Chicagoans deserve to live near convenient, affordable, healthy grocery options. We know access to grocery stores is already a challenge for many residents, especially in the South and West Sides, said Mayor Brandon Johnson. A better, stronger, safer future is one where our youth and our communities have access to the tools and resources they need to thrive. My administration is committed to advancing innovative whole-of-government approaches to address these inequities. I am proud to work alongside partners to take the step envisioning what a municipality-owned grocery store in Chicago could look like. Right. So when they destroy the local business with COVID policy, when crime...
Again, like, that's not why food deserts didn't just pop up post-COVID. This is something that has been, I mean, I don't know if the 90s, but I heard this like talked about like maybe at the end of the Bush administration, definitely during Obama. Like, this is a problem. People, and we'll get to it, very clear, like when certain communities address this problem, it's not so objectionable, but like this is a very clear problem in America that capitalists, it is not provide the profit they're interested in to give you groceries.
I mean, that was the one thing is like, we got to establish this early, is that yes, food deserts have been a problem in this country for a long while. And why is that? Is because these private companies will, what is their intention? What is their goal? What is their reason for being? Well, it's to make profit. And there are some areas that are more profitable than others. Grocery stores, from what I understand, is a bit of a tough business, right? The margins aren't massive for most places, particularly if you are operating in underserved and poor areas, because those are places where people might be being a little bit more thrifty, not trying to buy those big ticket items like, pre-made meals and things like that. It's why one of the fastest growing businesses in the United States post recession and after the financial crisis was Dollar General, Dollar Tree. And those oftentimes were going into communities to sort of fill in the food gap, particularly not just in urban areas, a lot of it in rural America. Where that is sort of like where you have to go to get your groceries. There might be something about 2-3 hours away. But a lot of communities in this country have been struggling with this for a long while. And I know we got like more stuff to talk about with this, so I don't want to go down a whole rabbit hole. But by the way, Brandon Johnson's not the first one to suggest this, nor will is he even the first one to get it done. There have been multiple attempts, successful, by the way, across this country in places that aren't crime, quote, crime-ridden Chicago, but just, small little towns where the one grocery store closed. So I hope I didn't steal your thunder on that.
Yes, you did. You stepped right all over my shit.
Sorry.
David. But let's actually do that, because I mean, here's just one. This one's from Erie, Kansas. This is from, I believe 2019. I think it was pre-COVID. I'll look that up while we watch this.
Well, when you think of city employees, you might think about ones in government, maintenance, but what about a butcher?
KSN Stefan Reels joins us, and Stefan, that's the case in Erie, Kansas.
Yes, it is, and it all started last year when the only supermarket in Erie was put up for sale, so the city bought it. It's something that not only kept a fixture in the city, in the community, but it also provided those who
This one was 2022, so this one was post-COVID. The other one we're going to talk about was 2019.
benefits with them.
It's a very important part. If you lose your grocery store, the town starts to wither.
So the city of Erie decided to save it. Last year, with community support, the city bought Stubbs Market. Now called Erie Market, it's just finished its first quarter under city management, and it's off to a great start.
Oh, it's been great. The community's been very supportive.
The first quarter is showing strong that we are making some money to put back.
The store is giving back even more. Since the turnover, all the employees started to receive benefits they didn't have before.
They became City of Erie employees, so now they have all the benefits that we have.
We are offered insurance for full-time people and retirement. We also give them paid vacations and sick days too.
Benefits can often be a struggle for local companies to offer, making the hiring process difficult.
When you want to be hired, that's one thing you're looking for is insurance. It's part of the pay package, really. It means a lot because before, when you work for mom and pop places, it's hard for the mom and pop places to afford.
Sorry, just to pause. Just for later reference, just notice the type of things and brand names and stuff that are on the counters, because Tim's going to talk a bunch of shit later.
insurance. So with the city and they have more employees, it's a better opportunity for sure for them.
With this new resource, it's helped the store further develop their team.
It brought in some really good employees. Of course, we kept the employees that were already here and switched them over, which they were very thankful for.
Helping keep the city of Erie a little more convenient.
A lot of times people don't have time to run to the next town over, and so we try to carry everything they could possibly need for.
The city of Erie recently received a loan for rural development to help put more money back into the city after buying the store. Now, city officials also want to have an official grand opening for Erie Market sometime later this summer.
Sounds good. Stephen, thanks.
That loan was from the United States Department of Agriculture, and that is exactly what the United States Department of Agriculture should be doing. A beautiful use of thing there. So yeah, I mean, I think it was good actually point to kind of bring people to reality before Tim goes on here and just talks in complete hypotheticals. Yeah.
We got to get back to this because if we just go on a bunch of tangents, we'll never get done. But like, this is a theme, by the way, not just with Tim, but with all these guys. It's like they do no research. It's actually crazy. Yes. Like, I don't want to take away the magic for anybody, but when we do these kind of post game segments, usually Matt and I like spend a little bit of time in the afternoon talking about it, or whatever. But we're not going nuts, right? Very cursory, quick research on these kind of things. Wow, it produces incredible results. And it's just amazing for me to see somebody like highlight these kind of stories and do zero.
Yes.
Like
completely mailing it in. And about people going fucking hungry because capitalism doesn't serve them and talking his shit about crime. Like, I mean, really, like, I mean, it's why it's so flagrant, really. Like, yeah, here we go.
Innovative whole of government approaches to address these inequities.
By the way, if he sounds a little bit fast, it's because I have him at 1.1, just because, life is short.
Work alongside partners to take the step envisioning what a municipality-owned grocery store in Chicago could look like. Right. So when they destroy the local business with COVID policy, when crime then runs rampant and you can't support your business anymore, they then say, oh, gee golly, I guess we're going to have to do it. Everyone's complaining. Here's your solution. Hey, we can't force private businesses to come and open up a grocery store. And crime, these poor people are just hungry. We'll make a a government-owned grocery store. And I wonder how that'll play out. It's going to be like Aldi, probably a whole bunch of generic brands that will cost the bare minimum and inevitably become deeply corrupted. That's how things go. You think the food's going to be healthy and good? No, it's going to be garbage. It's going to be plastic trash. It's going to be eventually too expensive. You see, it'll be really interesting what happens when a government-run business comes in and undercuts all the other private businesses. You see where this is going? Someone in a neighboring municipality will be like,
sorry, but like, you can't do both anymore, Tim, right? You can't do the the government can't really do anything well. That's why private business has to do things. And then also be like, well, the government can absolutely outmaneuver and outcompete all of its private competition on these kind of things. You got to pick one, right? You can't do both in the same sentence.
David, this is why Tim Pool was christened by Timba on Toast as the milk toast fence sitter. He can do both. And there's about 7 minutes left of this. He's going to do both about 8 times each.
Store is cheaper. So they'll go there. Eventually. Well, it's not really cheaper.
Nice. There is no capitalist grocery stores in these areas. That's why they're putting them there in the first place. There's not even one to compete out of existence.
Subsidizes it. They'll make this argument. Look, it may cost $5 for a gallon of milk. Prices go up. But the average person can't afford it. So here's what the government store is going to do. We're going to sell milk for $3 because you can't afford it. It's reduced option. Now, even though it costs us $5, we'll sell it for $3, which means the store operates at a loss. But don't worry, the taxpayer will pay the rest. That's already how it operates. They have reduced fare bus passes.
No. I mean, I don't know why he says already it operates, because the only reason he feels such a license to talk shit about this is because it doesn't exist yet. So he can pretend like he can make up the details in general. But like, all this thought experiment about like they're probably going to sell it for a loss. They're probably like all this is him making it up. None of that is true. There, like as we just saw in the previous one, there is actually even profits here. But instead of those profits going to the boss to do what the fuck he wants to with them, it goes back into the business.
Yeah, which helps everyone out. And also, just a really quick economics lesson too on a grocery store. You know, there's a lot of items that are on your capitalist grocery store shelves that also don't make that company any money. Sometimes they'll even take a loss on those kind of things. But the idea is, you know, some items you won't need to have at a certain price because people won't shop there if they can't get eggs and milk at a certain price. In particular, those are two things people are really sensitive about. How much we think we should be paying for those kind of things. Right. I think things should be cheap. Right. And therefore, I'm not railing against that. But this is already how private capitalist business is run too, right? It's like we need to have people in the door and we offer, that's why you do low prices, right? That, I don't know. It's just like, it's a child's brain version of even like free market or private industry economics.
But what's funny is like he's selling right now, actually basically like you said, like the content of this is child brained, but he has this tone of like, this is how they get you. This is the real secret. It's like, I've been to Bohemian Grove. I saw the plans. It's all of this. And it's just like, he's like, it's like he's brainstorming it. And yeah, we will go a little bit more.
If you are of a certain income level, you can apply for reduced fare passes and get on the bus and the trains at a lower rate than everybody else. Subsidized, of course, by everyone else paying the bill. What happens then when this store shuts? Look here, let me read this. Johnson's release noted it aimed to provide food equity, and it estimates that the U.S. Department of Agriculture found that 63.5% of residents in the West Englewood and 52% of residents in East Garfield Park live more than a half mile from their nearest grocery store, whereas in Westtown it's less than 1% of residents. The initiative, if completed, would mark Chicago becoming the first major U.S. city to launch a government-owned grocery store to deal with food inequity. Let's say they don't do direct subsidy. Let's say they just sell the products at cost. They say, we don't need to make profit. Okay. It's taxpayer dollars that fund the operation of the store, so we just need the store to break even. So there's no profit, there's no surplus. The milk, which normally costs...
So if it's breaking even, why do they need taxpayer funds to, anyway?
Your local grocery store now costs $3.50. People are going to be like, I'd rather just drive to the government store because the milk's $3.50. The for-profit stores then say, we cannot maintain this.
Again, also because the government store is the only one nearby.
Yes.
And the only one available to me.
Competing with a government who's selling things at cost. And they shut down. Now a new area has no grocery store. There. And then along comes the mayor to be like, well, gee, let's launch another one. Unlimited investment opportunity for the government because you pay the bill.
Wait, can we just, like, sorry, we just like, I'm sorry, but like, just really fast.
Absolutely.
Who is the loser in that situation item, right? So if what we're establishing, right, is that like, oh, there's a place you can go and you can buy your groceries that has the same comparable or maybe even better produce and goods at a price that is cheaper than what the private capitalists want to do. You can save money, get the same kind of things. Well, who's the loser then? Is it everyday people in Chicago, or is it the people who are sitting on top of grocery store empires in the city of Chicago, right? It's like, who are you? This is the thing you always got to remember with these guys is that like the worst person to inconvenience is not the people, as much as they love to talk about everyday people. It is bosses and capitalists and owners. Yep. It sounds like a good situation. If everyone can get cheaper groceries, good groceries at a convenient location for them, I don't understand what is dystopian.
Well, keep watching.
You get a monopoly on grocery stores. Yeah, then you get no food. You know what's going to happen? No more fancy meals. No more variety. No more natural peanut butter.
Sure, man.
Well, the natural peanut butter is too expensive. Why are we going to pay for that? We've got this perfectly good hydrogenated stuff with extra high fructose corn syrup right here. Look, we're trying to reduce them.
This is why I pointed your attention to the Reese's behind that person in the Kansas one.
Having some food's better than having no food. The last thing you want is a monopoly. But how is a private business supposed to compete? It cannot. Now, I'm not saying there's a grand conspiracy, but I'll tell you this, the dominoes are falling in this direction.
Again, like it's a monopoly because there literally wasn't anything there prior to it, and the things can't compete because they don't exist because they don't. Like that's that's the fundamental conceit of this entire, basically American Enterprise Institute like tryout he's doing here.
They say, quote, "The city of Chicago is reimagining the role the government can play in our lives by exploring a public option for grocery stores via a municipally owned grocery store and market," stated Maya Pawar, a senior advisor at the Economic Security Project. Not dissimilar from the way a library or the postal service operates. A public option offers economic choices and power to communities. A city-owned grocery store in the south or west side of Chicago would be a viable way to restore access to healthy food in areas that have suffered from historic and systemic disinvestment. The administration has reportedly kicked off a feasibility study to see how the store can succeed. I'll tell you the story, my friends, of Pruitt-Igoe. Pruitt-Igoe was a housing complex for low.
Now, this is a very interesting story, and I almost edited this out because it sounds like a detour, but then I realized it actually explains why Tim is getting mad now and why he didn't get mad earlier. So the Pruitt-Igoe, remember that.
Income individuals that was launched in the St. Louis area. Originally, the problem was homelessness and a lack of affordable housing. Many people who lived in St. Louis ended up leaving the city and forming smaller towns outside of St. Louis. St. Louis is actually a large county of like 90 plus cities. There were quickly housing covenants enacted, and because they couldn't racially discriminate, what they would do is they'd form a community and then say, no new houses. Here's the law. And what that meant, the people who lived there for a long time, and they weren't going to be selling anything to anybody else. There would be no houses built, and thus you've kept racial populations out of your community. I don't agree with the general idea, but I suppose people can form whatever pacts they want to form in private. Pruitt-Igoe was partly the cause of this.
On that tepid condemnation of racial covenants, I just want to point. Yeah, I just want to. Would you be shocked if this whole Pruitt-Igoe case study was famous? Was a famous myth, and that in fact there is a whole documentary called "The Pruitt-Igoe Myth," in which the argues that a factor such as structural changes occurred in St. Louis. Public welfare policies, racial segregation, and flawed assumptions. Basically, they built the thing with government money, but there was no subsidy for anybody in the area to actually pay for the cost of it. And so nobody could afford it. And it was in areas that this was the period of white flight. So like these are areas where the populations are massively white flight, as Tim actually does point to there. And yeah, like you can't just have the government build apartment buildings if there's still a massively impoverished population that can't pay rent. Like, surprise, that's the actual like lesson of Pruitt-Igoe. It wasn't that like any sort of government housing is a failure. We know like places like Vienna exist, right? Like, so it's just, but it's interesting that like the whole racist. Racists, I don't like it, but they can do what they want. That is why I would suggest Tim Pool has taken exception with Chicago doing this, and why he didn't take exception with Kansas. And once we get to it, at the end of this, we'll get to Florida, because that's another case study I want to get into. But I do want to let Tim cook a little bit more.
It was government-funded housing that, when it started, was like, okay, the government has come in here and they've subsidized this housing. We're going to put low-income people in it. Predominantly the black population who are lower income.
They built it and did not subsidize the rent.
But eventually it fell to mismanagement, became disrepaired, disheveled, dilapidated, all the words you can think.
Oh, also maintenance was also not subsidized. So, it was kind of dependent on having full, all the units occupied.
Crime started to run rampant and nobody wanted to live near it anymore. A government-run store is going to be mismanaged, to say the least. They will have no incentive to properly clean the floors or maintain the business. Why? They cannot fail. Now, I know libraries aren't all disgusting. It's not going to be that bad. I'm not saying it's going to be a bunch of zombies walking around with...
They can fail. Sorry. The people can say like, hey, that whole thing where we empowered you to run a market? It's covered. The walls are covered in shit. So actually, we're going to vote you out of office now. Can you do that with your local supermarket? I don't really think you can.
Well, I mean, that's exactly it at the end of the day, is that like the fact of the matter is that people can't get food or have limited access to
Right.
food. because these private capitalists are unwilling or unable, as has been established, right? If you want to even give them the argument, right?
Yeah.
They're unable to survive there. Well, I don't know. Maybe setting something up that has some stability and some public influence might be a good solution to this problem. I don't know. This is a bizarre thing to get mad about, and as we'll get into later, to just create tales about what is going to be.
Just talk whole shit, just out of your ass, just completely out of your ass. It's about like people feeding themselves. It's really despicable.
Everywhere. I'm saying there's no economic incentive to offer.
Oh, sorry. Let me go back because this is when he realizes he's kind of getting a little bit ahead of himself.
They will have no incentive to properly clean the floors or maintain the business. Why? They cannot fail. Now, I know libraries aren't all disgusting. It's not going to be that bad. I'm not saying it's going to be a bunch of zombies walking around with mold everywhere. I'm saying there's no economic incentive to offer premium services or to go above and beyond. There's no complaints. In fact, likely little refunds if you're lucky. They're going to say, we don't need your money. We don't care about you as the customer because we're indefinitely funded. In which case, you will end up with a degradation of goods and services.
I know.
You need competition, but the government has infinite money because they just take it from you by force. How are you supposed to maintain a level of quality? Don't believe me? I mean, come on. We only have 70 years.
You know, you can almost say these private grocers also take it by force. It's like, I'm hungry. I need what you have. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's a little, like, if I can't have, I don't know. Anyway.
Soviet Union to attest for what I'm saying. 69, I guess. Their grocery store is fine, not filthy, but lacking products. Why would a government-run grocery store buy 10 different kinds of peanut butter? They just buy the one peanut butter and they'll slap peanut butter on it. When I was a kid, the grocery store by me had these yellow cans and it was just stamped with the name of what was on it. Beans, black beans, refried beans, mushrooms. No label, no brand, nothing. Now, what they started doing is they've created the store brand. So like Walmart is good value and stuff because they realized, people actually like it when they're buying a branded product they can recognize, not just generic product on the wall. The problem is when it comes to government subsidy, they got no incentive to do that. I mean, maybe they might for a while, but eventually they're going to say, we got to cut the budget. Who's doing graphic design for our store products? We don't need that. If people want beans, they'll buy beans. Just put a white label, write beans on it. I guess these cans also didn't have nutrition information, so I think that was a law that changed. Now they have to have it. But ultimately,
that they're not going to have graphic design on like, first of all, just an insane, like wrong argument from the get go. But like, the big tragedy here is that like, it's so fucking awesome.
What is this going to mean? What is this going to mean for, what is this going to mean?
You know how fucking happy you get when you buy a box of Twix and you see that little rabbit hanging out with the bear?
Exactly. Tony the Tiger. What's this going to mean for Tony the Tiger? I mean, do you not care about Tony the Tiger?
They might for a while, but eventually they're going to say, we got to cut the budget. Who's doing graphic design for our store products? We don't need that. If people want beans, they'll buy beans. Just put a white label, write beans on it. I guess these cans, they also didn't have nutrition information, so I think that was a law that changed. Now they have to have it. But ultimately, private businesses will struggle to compete with the public sector businesses. Are there private libraries?
Like a million things a second, but like, again, like this is where you got to be really. This is like a lesson you got to remember when you're even dealing with these people. Even if you go into it being like, "Oh, these guys are ridiculous" or whatever. Never let them get too far ahead because now he's actually moved what's going on, right? So what Brandon Johnson is suggesting is that they have a store and that store will get products to sell. Not that the government of Chicago is now going to start manufacturing beans or cereals or all of these other kind of things, right? So like we're already like off track here, right? And again, you gotta like it can sometimes be hard to keep the thread because they are all over the place. But remember, he's now substituting a whole other thing too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like it's like not only are they making beans, but like they're just not working.
They're cutting the graphic design program at the bean factory.
It's one thing to replace Hormel. It's another thing not to put some nice packaging on it for us.
Libraries still exist. Barnes and Noble's gone.
Yeah, man.
These bookstores are falling apart. Some still exist in some places, but for the most part, they're struggling. But libraries will be around for a good long time, so long as people keep saying we should have them. I like libraries, but libraries should serve a community purpose. And I'm also telling people of this too.
Yeah, they do. And so do grocery stores, which is why actually you can make that analogy and why it's actually fine that actually libraries prove that we can have grocery stores. Thank you, Tim. Like he actually and Aaron Brown mentioned this too, like he stumbles into uncontradicting himself and then he's just like, fuck it. I spent 10 minutes of my time on this. I need to upload this anyway. It's gonna be like 200,000 views from you hogs. Might as well just upload, click.
Your business, if you're a brick and mortar store, should be a community enterprise. You need to figure out how you bring people in to break bread with each other and become friends with each other. And that's the real incentive. Otherwise, you're going to get replaced by robots. They're going to automate everything away. And then the government's going to end up owning everything. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel.
Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Just completely insane. Like, the automation isn't going to come because business owners didn't make their lobbies like a communal area of like togetherness in addition to a place to sell products.
Dude. we gotta start breaking bread together, y'all. We need to, I guess, make some restaurants and the grocery store.
Milton Friedman would call you a cuck for saying that.
That's so awesome. Just at the end of an insane rant, just like start an idea, realize it's not going somewhere, and then the hard cut. All right, next time, like next subject over here.
Exactly. But look, we have to spend a little bit more time on this because look, the previous one in Erie, Kansas, that was 2022. You could say, look, it's only 2023. We got to let that experiment run a little bit before we see like if Kansas turns into Venezuela. This is from, this is Baldwin, Kansas here, or Baldwin, Florida, I should say. And here's the first segment we're going to play from KFDX.
Government takeover in Florida that Republicans and conservatives are apparently fully supporting.
As Jonathan Sarai shows us, it's involved in essential service in a small town.
When Baldwin, Florida's only grocery store closed.
And again, just to clarify, this is pre-COVID. This is in 2019.
And city council decided to run their own market, a novel solution, especially for a conservative rural town.
This is definitely Red America, and a lot of Republicans in this area, and it never dawned on anybody to think about it being socialism, and we never had the intention of being that way. It's just pure necessity.
Especially for many elderly and poor residents who have limited access to transportation to drive 10 miles to the nearest fresh meats and produce.
We certainly don't see it as making a political statement. This is us looking out for ourselves, taking care of our own, the way I think it's supposed to be done.
As chain stores consolidate.
And now I just want to jump in there. There's a little bit more of this, but Tim gets credit for like caring about supposedly people like that. People that would hate to be called socialists and that are just trying to like fight in a world that's owned by the corporatists or the elites or whatever. But he fucking does not give a shit about those people either. That's why he never like this is. That's why he doesn't care about this. He doesn't care to look any of this stuff up. But a little bit more of this segment.
Say serving remote areas is costly for an already low-margin business, and independent grocers who play a key role in small towns have been declining in share over the past decade.
It is just increasingly difficult to find sole proprietorships, private entrepreneurs to come into town and take that kind of risk that grocery stores pose.
While residents in some food deserts have turned to co-ops or nonprofits, the city of Baldwin is running the store much like a public utility, where food is the basic resource.
The same as your water and sewer. You know, we pull water out of the ground and we sell it to the customers, and the store's the same.
And city officials say they don't plan to stay in the grocery business indefinitely.
If a reputable entrepreneur wants to take over the store, they'll step aside. But until that need is met, the mayor is also the grocer.
Quite an offer there. That was again in 2019. Let's see from this summer how that came up. Did a capitalist say, oh, finally, here, I can serve these people?
We got to get more brands in here. We got to get some graphic design. And also, we're going to have a place for people to break bread together.
Yeah. It turns out that actually no capitalist did come to take over. It is still a publicly run, and in fact, it came through at a crucial moment this summer when the city of Baldwin had a boil water notice because of plumbing that was out. And guess what? Their public supermarket, which wouldn't have been there hadn't the city stepped in, had a whole bunch of water on reserve. Here's that segment.
Manageable, excuse me, thanks to a unique local business.
$7.99. When was the last time you called a grocery store?
Baldwin Market.
For the meat special.
Let me get meat manager for you.
If you live in Baldwin, you call the Baldwin Market and know exactly who to ask for.
If you ever come to the Baldwin Market and you're not satisfied, I'm Larry. Please find me. We'll fix it.
At the market, Larry Phillips is the meat man, assistant store manager,
and we've got cases of water here also,
and fixer.
We were over-prepared. Even though we didn't expect it, we could have handled a fluctuation of traffic had we needed to provide water or ice.
A pipe break Monday left Baldwin without water pressure for more than 24 hours.
Along with gallons of waters.
But they knew where to go.
We're very fortunate to have it. We really are. We know it's here. We know we have to support it.
Mayor Sean Lynch started the market 5 years ago after Baldwin went a year without a grocery store.
For a lot of us, this is all we have. We don't have the means to go either to IGA in White House or to McClenny for the grocery stores there.
The market is owned by the town. Its people stock the shelves and cash you out.
We want our customers here in Baldwin to be able to get everything they need at the Baldwin Market.
People in Baldwin won't need to go searching for water or the best price for a steak.
We got another one for you.
You already know where to go.
Certainly a gem in this small town in western Duval County. Again, Baldwin is under a boil water advisory for the next 2.
There you go. So coming up great this summer. And guess what? The brands were still there. I saw Lay's.
I saw some Faygo, bro.
They are stocked to the gills in Faygo, honestly. And I will say, like, also Google, the Baldwin Market, a 4.3 on Google, which is higher than any of the grocery stores near me. And I'll say the Erie Market in Kansas at a 4.6. So guess what? You can do this. Like, the governments can do this better than capitalists. And we need to, because people are suffering because this isn't happening. There's all sorts of communities that aren't so lucky and don't have mayors. And I just gotta say, like, we talk all about this sort of alienation and like how, like, this is that fucking guy Larry saying, I'm the guy. If you anything you want here, that I want that. Like, it's one thing to hear a fucking private proprietor do that. I'm sorry, it hits different when it's a guy who works for the city.
100%. And look, I mean, the nice thing about potentially having a publicly owned, grocery store is that, you can maybe pitch to the city or the government to do your cool ideas for what we can do for society, like having a place where you can break bread at the I'm sorry.
Exactly.
I love that shit so much.
You know what, Tim? Public skate parks, bro.
Yeah, what the hell, man? You can break a lot of bread there,
Break a lot of bread, come together. I mean, I just don't think
it's
that
just
the
so
profit
fucking,
motive.
It's so I mean, all that shit, those criticisms they're just so lazy. Like, you see something like this, you see the very real problem, which is something that you should care about. And also, like, depending on where you live, what your experience in life is, you might have not come across this, but I've lived in a few different places in my life, and I'll tell you, not having access to a good grocery store, which a lot of places that I've lived in, being a poor person, have been bad. And that is such a marked lower quality of life. And the experience of having access to a nice grocery store with fair prices, I mean, it's really important for your health, for your comfort, for your community, all those kind of things. And to sit here and act like, this is something that's really, I don't know, this is a basic thing that most people understand.
Tim shrieks about how the left wants to make you eat bugs and all of that sort of stuff. And meanwhile, he is actually propagandizing in support of keeping people like going to fucking Dollar General for whatever fucking food they can get.
Well, I mean, that's the thing that's so weird about the kind of right-wing thing about food, right? In general, is like all these chemicals they're putting in their food. Well, who's doing that?
Right.
It's private corporations trying to make a buck, not the government, right? It's private corporations putting in a lot of really sickening things in your food. It's right to look at the American food system and be like, man, there's some problems here. But you know who's doing that? Not the government, friends. It is private capitalists who are like, yeah, you know what? No one reads the labels, or they don't really have a choice anyway. So why use the good stuff when we can use something fake and cheap?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, look, I don't know if it's going to bring us communism like Tim said, but I want to see a lot more of it.
I think it's a great thing, and it's and like dropping Tim for a second. This is exactly the kind of thing that people who are active in local politics or things like that should be engaged in. Because man, you look at the way people were talking about the grocery store in Florida. Man, they were like, "This is ours. This is important to us." I mean, I can't remember. I'm gonna have to paraphrase, but what that woman said is like, we weren't thinking about making a political statement. We were just thinking about looking out for each other and looking out for ourselves. You know what? Call it whatever you want, man. Build more stuff like that. That's a very good thing. And I think people can wrap their heads around that. So, I mean, people like Tim should be scared about the potential success of like community-owned grocery stores.
Yeah. But I would just like to say, like, maybe address the historical examples before you just talk shit for 10 minutes about how you think it's going to lead to, a dearth of graphic design workers.